Now the chips are down. This is a test of our determination and
This is a CBS News special report. From CBS News headquarters in New York, here is Dan Rather.
Good day again. The New York stock market is down 106 points in early trading on the news that Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev has been ousted. Just in Dateline Moscow, Russian president, that's the Russian Republic President Boris Yeltsin, who was elected. Yeltsin has ordered all Army and KGB units involved in the overthrow of Mikhail Gorbachev to stand down. And Yeltsin said that he was assuming control on the territory of Russia. Again, we're talking about what's sometimes called Mother Russia, the Russian Republic. The statement issued in the Russian Federation Parliament was issued as an elite police unit loyal to Yeltsin stood guard. Yeltsin said that all Central Soviet organs of executive power on Russian territory were now transferred to his, Yeltsin's, control. But Steve Cohen, Princeton University professor, who's with me here now, points out that one key question is how is Yeltsin to communicate this message? It's one thing to have it out in the West. It's another thing to get it out inside the Soviet Union. Presumably, the coup leaders control the key communication points. So the question for the moment is Yeltsin's call for resistance, call for the Army and the KGB not to go along with the coup leaders, at least in Russia itself. Is that message actually getting out? Let's go to Jonathan Sanders, our resident scholar and CBS News correspondent in our Moscow bureau. Jonathan?
Dan, although the authorities have managed to knock the most independent radio station, Echo Moscow, off the air by sending the KGB in early this morning, there are still independent sources of information. The independent news agency Interfax is spreading the word of what Yeltsin said. In addition, we are waiting to see in about 2.5 hours, Russian television is scheduled to make its first evening news broadcast. That's their first news broadcast of the day. They work out of Soviet television. Soviet television is surrounded by the Black Beret troops who keep order in the Soviet Union. It is unclear if Russian television will be able to broadcast. We do know, however, that this morning, when there were troops and tanks around the Russian parliament where Boris Yeltsin works, when they were chasing curious reporters away, it looked like the central authorities were going to prevent the Russians from meeting. That did not happen. Troops loyal to Boris Yeltsin came in and took over control. We know that the tanks and the armored personnel carriers that are throughout the center of Moscow now are being stopped. People are sitting on them. People loyal to Yeltsin are chanting Yeltsin's name and reading the declaration that he put out earlier, calling on people not to obey this call for a right-wing coup. Yeltsin himself was out there and spoke. We also know, Dan, that there are places in Moscow where people are erecting barricades. Barricades very much like those erected earlier this year in Vilnius, Lithuania, when troops loyal to Moscow stormed the television tower and tried to take over the parliament building there. Of course, none of this is being communicated to the Soviet people. Soviet television all day long has been reading decrees, reading official statements by the committee, the emergency committee that's taking over the central government, and they've been playing music and showing classical performances. The one bit of official information that we do have in just lately is that the Soviet parliament, according to TASS, will go into special emergency session on August 26th to consider for endorsement the decision to impose a state of emergency in what it calls some parts of the USSR. Dan?
Jonathan, those photographs were just in, we're seeing the videotape for the first time, of people in Moscow rolling such things as culverts and long pieces of iron or steel in the streets. Is there much of that going on? What's the significance of that?
Dan, it's scattered incidents of building barricades. People really have learned a lesson from the revolts, the bloodshed earlier in the year in the Baltic republics, and of course there has been bloodshed 2 years ago down in Georgia, which was covered on Soviet television. People are quite aware of this, and it's been a training school for those who want to protect democracy. In fact, the most unique aspect of what is going on in Moscow right now is this confrontation between the old order that wants to ensure its continuity through a coup, following the example of subordinates to the leader taking over as they did under Nikita Khrushchev, and the new order, the people who are following Boris Yeltsin, who say they have a mandate. What's interesting is when we were out on the streets today asking people, nobody was particularly enthusiastic about Mikhail Gorbachev, who is one of the most disliked people in the country, but everyone was very much in favor of what Boris Yeltsin is doing, trying to safeguard Gorbachev's position.
Jonathan Sanders,
Dan?
again underscoring that you're reporting from Moscow and most of what we know comes out of Moscow itself. Any indication of troop movements into the Baltics, into other republics, any indication of what we've seen in Moscow happening in other cities of the Soviet Union?
Dan, two important things. One, we got information earlier today from the authorities in Vilnius, Lithuania, saying that the one remaining television center in the city of Kaunas, the second city of Lithuania, was now surrounded by the Black Beret troops who were guarding key installations, who took over the central television tower in Lithuania in January, killing some 18 people. The other thing that's important, Dan, is we were out near the Kremlin where people were clambering onto the tanks and the armored personnel carriers. And the boys there were very careful to take out the cartridges that fit into their AK-47 and other weapons and show us that there were no bullets in them, as if to say, we've got the tanks, we've got the armored personnel carriers, we do not have bullets to shoot at you.
Jonathan Sanders speaking to us live from our CBS News Bureau in Moscow. The stock market is down 101.5 points in the first just over 1 hour of trading. Those are the details as we have them from the stock market. The Tokyo Stock Exchange, which is already closed for the day now, closed almost 6% down. Now, President Bush is going to return to Washington. This is an update of this second. The traveling White House at President Bush's vacation headquarters in Kennebunkport, Maine, has just announced that President Bush will be returning to Washington, obviously to stay on top of a volatile situation in the Soviet Union in which the questions of the moment continue to be, is Mikhail Gorbachev indeed still alive? Unconfirmed reports that he was under house arrest, but he has not been seen anywhere on Soviet television so far as anyone can determine. Is Gorbachev alive? Boris Yeltsin, if you find yourself pulling for the side of democracy, the side of glasnost and perestroika, for the moment, those in the West who are pulling to keep that window open have to have their eyes on Boris Yeltsin. Yeltsin, the elected president of the Soviet Republic, is calling for resistance, calling on elements of the army and the KGB to resist. Is his message getting out? Will people follow Yeltsin? Keep in mind that those that control the gun have historically controlled the Soviet Union, and right now the coup leaders under the new president, who was the vice president, Gennady Yanayev, they control the military, the KGB, the military-industrial complex, and the Communist Party apparatus. Those are the things in the Soviet Union which, so far as anything works in the Soviet Union, those are the things that work. Now, as for the hurricane right now poses its greatest danger to the easternmost tip of Long Island, New York, to Rhode Island, and later in the day to Massachusetts. It's a very dangerous hurricane. 3 on a 5 scale of danger, that is 5 being the most dangerous. This hurricane rated 3, winds 115 miles an hour with gusts to 138 miles an hour. Some indication, not yet done, that it may be downscaled to a number 2 hurricane as the afternoon goes along, but that still would have it remaining an extremely dangerous hurricane. Hurricane warnings, these are full warnings, are now up from Cape May, New Jersey, through Eastport, Maine. Parts of the tip of Long Island, as we said, Rhode Island, places in Massachusetts such as Cape Cod, Hyannisport, and Nantucket. If the hurricane continues on its present path, that both high winds, torrential rains, and extremely high tides are potential dangers as this hurricane moves along during the day, and it is moving very quickly. At last report, the center of Hurricane Bod was about 165 miles south-southwest of Providence, Rhode Island. And the hurricane is moving toward the north-northeast at just over 30 miles an hour. Let's have another quick look at the stock market as we're trying to measure that as it goes along the day. At last look, it was 101.5 down. Anything later on that? Jackie Adams is at the stock market, or on the floor of the stock market. Jackie, what's the latest there?
Well, actually, there's been a little bit of a recovery here. At this moment, the Dow Jones Industrial is off 81 points, but as little as 15 minutes ago, it was off 107 points. There was just something on the wires here that said that some Japanese traders see only a temporary Soviet setback. The noise level here has increased dramatically. There is a lot of activity going on. Also, about a half hour ago at 10 o'clock, the Dow was down 50 points, and that triggered one of the protective mechanisms. Computer trades were limited at that point, so that might be the effect that we're seeing right now with the market down only 81 points. The expectation here is that the market will drop about the level that London did earlier. That's between 100 and 150 points. Just a warning, if the market were to drop by 250 points, the entire stock market would close.
And right this second, as you look over there, Jackie,
right now,
the market is down how much?
82 points.
Thank you, Jackie Adams, with whom we'll be checking back from time to time during the day to see what the effect is on the stock market of Gorbachev being out in the Soviet Union. But sooner or later, we naturally hope sooner, the stock markets will recover. Steve Cohen, our CBS News consultant and professor at Princeton University, will the Soviet Union recover?
There's a school of historical thought that Russia has a chance to reform herself about once every 50 or 100 years. It was tried in the 19th century, in the earliest 20th century. Some historians say that when reforms collapse or are overthrown, which is the better way to put it, it takes another 50 or 100 years for another chance to come. I'm not so pessimistic. What we're seeing in the Soviet Union is the role of the media, the importance of it. The people who've organized this coup are clearly moving to seize the television stations.
That's the reason the new president is going to hold a news conference sometime this morning.
He wants to convince us that he's done something virtuous. It'll be a hard act to produce. Yeltsin has called for resistance. Yeltsin has said that all security forces on Russian territory must obey only Yeltsin and not the people who carried out this coup. But can he communicate that to the people? Can he communicate it to the army, to the KGB?
Question, excuse me, Steve, but we're seeing Yeltsin on this videotape read this proclamation. Is anybody else in the Soviet Union seeing it?
It's not clear that that's been shown. As Jonathan Sanders reported, Russian television, which is under the control of the democratically elected Yeltsin government, is supposed to go on the air in a few hours, but they are housed in the central government's television facilities, and those facilities have been surrounded by tanks most of the day. On the other hand, there is something new in the Soviet Union, a recent development in the last 10 or 15 years, and that's the shortwave radio. Almost everybody has a shortwave radio. Most major countries have Russian language broadcast into the Soviet Union, and at this very moment, no doubt, they are beaming the news that's been closed off the Russian networks into Russia for people to hear. Some people would argue that shortwave radio's small technologies made big changes in politics by breaking the old regime's monopoly on information.
And the telephone itself, a worldwide telephone system.
Exactly.
Steve Cohen, who will be with us as part of our continuing coverage of what's happening inside the Soviet Union. So many questions. What does the Ukraine do? Remember that President Bush went down to Kiev, the capital of the Ukraine, on his just recently completed trip to the Soviet Union. What does the Ukraine do? What does the state of Georgia do? What happens in the Baltics? Does Yeltsin's call for a general strike hold? All of these questions hanging out there as we await what is scheduled to be a news conference at any time now by the new president of the Soviet Union, the man who betrayed Mikhail Gorbachev by leading the coup attempt, Gennady Yanayev. We expect Yanayev a news conference at any time. That's part of what we're waiting for here. The stock market went down over 100 points, then recovered. At last report was down about 80 points off. Long way to go this day on Wall Street, but the early indications are mildly promising, might be the best way to put those. Hurricane Bob pointed at the moment at Rhode Island and Massachusetts. Stay tuned to this CBS station as we keep you up to date during the day on details of Gorbachev out in the Soviet Union and Hurricane Bob pointed at the Northeast United States.
This has been a CBS News special report.
This is CBS.
Amazing Blue Star ointment stops itching fast. Jock itch, ringworm, psoriasis, tetter, and removes corns and calluses. Blue Star ointment, the one that's guaranteed. Ask for it.
There she is, the love of my life. She's beautiful and a pretty good basketball player. I hear she likes me. I heard she thinks I'm cute. Now watch me impress her with my smooth moves. Okay, maybe I'm not too good at basketball, but hey, I'm adorable.
The selection, the service, the values are one of a kind. That's when I hit you, time after time.
Thanks for Women Only, you changed my life.
Thanks for Women Only, you changed my life.
Thanks for Women Only, you have changed my life.
I like For Women Only because it's just for women.
I enjoy going to a club where all women go.
I liked it because it was just for women.
You don't have to worry about men.
My husband wouldn't have let me join if there was men here.
It'd be too bashful to work out with guys.
Hey, we're having a party. Come on in and join us today and get in on our open house race.
Channel 5 asks you to support the following